All right. Hello and welcome to our chat on dance and culture. Sorry about the delay, but you know, this is how it is when you have events with amazing live music. You want to take the time for the live music to be ready when you are. So it's a few minutes, but at least we will dance our pom-pom out tonight. How are you feeling? Good, good. Hopefully we have enough chairs for everybody, otherwise maybe we can see if we need some more and be creative, or we can, if people feel comfortable with the floor, we can have an inner circle as well. Yeah, so this is not a lecture, even if maybe it would start a bit sounding like one, but that's not the plan. The plan is to set up a bit of a context for what this moment is about, and then to have a chat. And we will probably ask you some questions. And also, everybody is welcome to participate in answering these questions. So we are not the beholder of the knowledge of the universe, 42. But nice. A few nerds in the house. But
okay, now you have to explain.
Nope. You do not explain that. You know or you don't. But we're here to just bring up a topic that's been part of an ongoing conversation in the scene, especially in the past, let's say, 3 years. And that has been very important for many dancers, especially post-pandemic, because pandemic was a very, very hard time for many millions of people, and it was also a time where we had to be on pause, forced pause for many, and that also led for us to have a lot of time to think about many aspects of life. And so amongst the health crisis that we were facing, there was also a social crisis that I've been facing, where a lot of basic rights were they were not actually happening for some people, where there was a question about it. And it's not just, but one of such movement was the Black Lives Matter movement that really took up worldwide. It started in the US, but it was a movement, a social movement that was had repercussion around the globe, and also raised question of other minority or non-dominant groups' lives, and that they also matter in their own social context. So yeah, so that's a little bit of the video context. I want to start, and then I'll pass on the mic to my co-host, Steven Letermieux. Oh yeah, names. Hi, I'm Marie. I always forget to do the human thing. Again, that's 2 out of 3 today that I forgot. Hello, Marie. I am a French dancer of Caribbean and Senegalese descent. So I've had an interesting upbringing, including all 3 of those cultures in my life. And yeah, maybe you want to introduce. Yeah, we do the human stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in and just say this is Marie, by the way, but
I remember the bit.
Hi, so I'm Stephen. I am British, born in Nigeria, so I'm born and raised in London. That in itself is an interesting heritage, where you're born in a country that was a former colonial power of my parents' country. I'm actually a mechanical engineer by day, so that's generally what I actually do. And dancing about 9 years, something like that, maybe a bit more. One thing I'd like to invite everyone to just be mindful of, especially in this sort of space. This is, as Marie said, a discussion. So in as much as we might be talking and saying quite a lot of stuff, you are invited to chime in, to speak. And more importantly, it doesn't have to be things that you think we want to hear or agree with. Like, actually, I would say it's just as important to say, if you don't agree, to challenge, because we don't know everything. Right? Does that make sense? So if we just like, if there's something that we don't understand, just say it, so that we can sort of navigate this space together.
Yes, and just like in class, for those who had us today, it's a safe space. Your feelings and your reaction are yours, and they are valid. And so long as we are respectful with one another, you can please feel free to speak out and ask questions. Yes, there's no bad questions, or only the one that are not asked. Once I was told on bad questions. Any questions is good, and yeah, kindness and respect as much as we can. That would be lovely. Cool. So a little bit of the why we're having this. So this kind of talk, it's in my contract. If I am hired in an event, it is written in my contract that I would like to have space for this kind of discussion to happen. And that is my commitment as a guest in a culture that is not mine, to bring awareness of what it means to be a practitioner or to be a dancer or an enthusiast of a cultural tradition, and to raise that question. So that's my promise to myself that I made in 2020, and I'm trying to fulfill it as best as I can. I am not African American, so I am talking from a place of being a guest in that culture just like everybody else. However, we are part of the bigger umbrella of Black culture. So we speak also from that place of understanding. Yes, there are 2 live events that made me take that step to engage in this kind of conversation. I'm going to try to be brief with them. The first one was, I think it was 2016, and it was at a dance camp called Hereng in Sweden. And I had just done a talk on the life of Ethel. I always forget to check. Waters with an S? Yes. I always say Ethel Water, and I remember this. So I was speaking about Ethel Waters, a singer, a dancer, who I think is a beautiful mover and a beautiful singer, and worked with Duke Ellington and the likes and everything. And I was introducing the public to this lady because I thought she was really cool. And in the public was the late Miss Norma Miller. And I'm here and I'm talking, and I did my little research. I was excited and how like Pat, you did well. And then after the meeting, I go into the sitting area and I'm like, yeah, I did not make a mistake. And then comes in Miss Norma, who was best friends with Ethel Waters. Was like, so, you were talking about Ethel, but do you know about this, and do you know about that? And why didn't you talk about this and that? And I got grilled for a good 5 to 10 minutes about my performance. So that was a humble pie right there. And then, but I had done my research, so I was able to engage in that conversation, and I did not get destroyed. It's right there, right now, so it was good. But then Ms. Norma was like, okay, yeah, you know your stuff, but why do you care about my culture? Don't you have your own? Why do you do this dance? Why do you do that? Why are you here? You have your own culture. And I was like, fair question. Why? Why am I here? Why am I talking? Why am I teaching? Why am I dancing this dance? What is it in this dance that I connect with? And that's a question I'm still trying to answer. Like, it's not, I don't think it's a really easy question. I did try to answer. I don't even know what I said, probably nothing smart. But it was a good question, and it really started a reflection on why I want to participate in this. So that's one event that triggered this kind of reflection. And the second event that really made me realize that there was a need for something to change is not as funny, and it was May 25th, 2020, when George Floyd was murdered by a police officer kneeling on his neck for 7 minutes in front of a crowd pleading for George Floyd's life. And it was a very sad and anger-triggering, traumatic event for a lot of people, including a lot of my African-American friends. They were sad, they were angry, they were frustrated at yet the death of another black person at the hands of the police or of vigilantes, which was yet one more in a series of events that had happened in 2020 with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, or continuing with so many other people, Amadou Diallo, and you go all the way back to Emmett Till. This is an ongoing tragedy that they are living every day. So my black friends are upset and angry and going to social media, and from my friend from the Lindy Hop scene, I hear nothing. Not a word, not a comment, crickets. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But what's the next day? What is May 26th? World Lindy Hop Day. And then the Lindy Hop scene was like, yay, Lindy Hop! Woohoo, Frankie Manning! We love black culture! Let's celebrate this dance! It's great! And then my brain just broke. Because I was shocked. I was like, is this the reality in which I live? Is this the world? Do I have a foot in one world and a foot in another, where I'm surrounded by people who care about black culture, but not about black people? Who care about one black man, but not about many who are dying and still continue to die at the hands of police and vigilantes. So it was a bit a difficult moment that day. It was a very sour celebration of World Lindy Hop Day. But I didn't do anything that day because I was just like, yes, we are celebrating Lindy Hop and Frankie Manning and all the other originators and dancers. So I was like, I'm not going to be a sour puss right here. But then a few days later, I also went on social media and I asked the question, is this the scene, is this the community that we want to be? Is this the scene that we want to be where we care about black culture, where we don't care about black people? And if this is the scene that we want to be, I don't think this is the scene I want to be a part of, because it's not, maybe I'm not African American, but he could be my cousin. He could be my brother, and nobody cared. Yes. So, consequence of that, myself and a bunch of other dancers and dance educators who reached out to me after that little push on the social media, asking me if I was okay, and I wasn't. And then we were like, no, but we need to do something. It's up to us to actually take it into our hands and do something. So engaging in this kind of conversation is one of the things. But one of the other things that we did is that we created an organization called Collective Voices for Change. I don't know how many of you have heard about Collective Voices for Change? Quite a few. Yay! We're doing stuff. And the goal of this organization was to help recenter the dance and the people of the community that created it, and to center the voice of African American people in the practice or in the understanding of Lindy Hop, jazz, and also tap, all of those dance that came from this community. Because as we are in Europe, it's really easy to feel distance Because unless you have the opportunity to connect with some of the elders that come here, or if you yourself go in the US, it's gonna happen that you will never interact with the person of the community that created this dance that you love so much. So we wanted to bring those voices, especially for the European dancers, but also for the rest of the world and whoever wanted to hear more of these cultural practices from the people of the culture. And we've had a bunch of events. Stephen is also a board member, like we are 9 people leading the board and trying our best to bring events that we think can help the community understand a bit more about the dance and the culture. Plug. Plug. We have all our events, most of our events are available for rewatch if you haven't seen them. And we have an upcoming event which hasn't been announced yet, so first announcement on May 2nd, that's a Tuesday, together with Imada Spiewak, who is a psychologist from Germany, who works with shame and dealing with shame and shame resilience, and Gray Armstrong, a dancer and thinker and philosopher, I do like the word philosopher, from the US, who is also a practitioner of blues and Lindy Hop. And so together they're going to talk about shame and dealing with shame, or how understanding how shame can be also used to prevent change. And also, so that's going to be the focus on it, and we will have more information coming soon, so keep an eye out on the Collective Voices for Change Instagram.
Where is it?
It's going to be online. Yeah, we do everything online because we're trying to reach as many people as possible. Cool. I have some notes, I'm trying to think. One more thing, and then we will open the conversation. So one of our first events, we invited another philosopher and thinker from, he's not from, but he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and his name is Barrett Holmes Pittner. And he introduced us to a word that I would like to share with you if you don't know, and that word is ethnocide. How many people here have heard the word ethnocide? A few. How many people here have heard the word genocide? More people. Yeah. So ethnocide is the sibling of genocide, and it was coined at the same time. And while genocide is killing the people and killing the culture, really you want to erase the people from any proof that these people existed on this planet. Ethnocide is keeping the people, but destroying the culture. And that is a way of dehumanizing people. That is a way of belittling people, of keeping them dominated, and to make it easier to exploit them, and to make it easier to commodify them by denying that they have a culture. I grew up believing that the people that look like me created nothing. That is my reality. As a young black girl, I was never told that black people had contributed to this world. That's not something I would learn at school. That's something I would learn at home, because my dad was trying really hard to keep us aware of some of the black thinkers, but it's one person against a whole society. I was way too old to learn that black people created rock and roll. I was way too old to know that Alexandre Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers, was a black man. Way too old. I was in my 30s when I learned that. And we read these books at school. And one of the realities that either we erase the black people who have contributed things, we don't mention who they are, we don't mention that they are black people, or we claim black culture as world culture, and we say it belongs to everybody. Rock and roll is world culture, jazz is world culture, Lindy Hop is world culture, it belongs to everybody. Why does it matter to say that black people created it? It's everybody's dance. Well, a direct consequence of that, I had the sadness of witnessing myself last summer when I was doing the fieldwork. I'm doing a master's in dance and culture. So I'm studying anthropology of dance and ethnochoreology, and I did my fieldwork in the US on Lindy Hop. And I really wanted to experience Lindy Hop in the black community in the US and talking to the black practitioners. And I was asked by a very active dancer and community builder in New York, Samuel Coleman, to teach with him a class at Harlem School of the Arts for the summer intensive program for young dancers. So we had dancers aged 5 to 12 in the classroom, black kids from Harlem or around in New York. And we asked them, have you heard about Lindy Hop? Yes. Where was Lindy Hop created? They didn't know. They didn't know that it was created in Harlem. They didn't know that it was their cultural heritage. They didn't know that it was their ancestors who created this dance. Because Lindy Hop is world culture. It belongs to everybody. It's everybody's dance. It doesn't matter. Why should we say that black people created it? Why should we insist that it's a black dance? It has consequences. By doing that, by claiming black culture as world culture, we are stealing the cultural heritage of young kids that will maybe be in their 40s when they know what their people have created. So cultural appropriation is a real problem, and it has real consequences. So ethnocide is the word. Keeping the people, but erasing their culture. And you can erase their culture by erasing the heritage and claiming it as world culture. That's one way. All right. That was the lecture part. Question? Or do you want to answer? All right, so here's when we open the floor, and we have a mic that can float around. And I have a question for you. We have a question for you. For those of you who were aware that there was a conversation about dance and culture, cultural tradition, cultural appropriation, being a guest in the culture, and all those different topics, if you want to, would you like to share how you got introduced into that conversation, and also what were some of the I wrote words because I'm losing words. Main questions or misunderstandings that you encountered along the way, like something that were repetitively asked in this conversation, or some misconception that you have met. Yes.
I started the whole process while doing research for my master's. I was studying experimental publishing and kind of looked at all the different ways of
I don't know if people can hear you. Maybe I'll give you this one.
Yeah, just louder? If you
Yes.
If you tilt it upwards.
Okay, thank you.
So I was doing research into how to make things public and the documentation of content and archiving of content. And because I've been dancing many different dance forms in the past, I was really interested in notation of dance. So how just that music gets notated, I thought there must be a way that people document and archive dance. So I was looking first at scripts and how people drew dance to archive it in different ways.
You met Laban?
Yes. And the more research I did, the more I looked at all of the different types of dance forms that were mistranslated because of cultural either appropriation or just not understanding a particular culture. And the more I looked at different types of dance forms, I came across Lindy Hop. And because I did jive in the past, it was so easy for me to transfer to Lindy, so I started taking classes, and that's kind of how I ended up here many years later, just got sucked in. But I was very curious at how things get mistranslated, especially to erase a culture, or just because people they wanted to archive it, but they just didn't know how. So that's where my background came from. And the things that, what you mentioned, what was the main thing that kind of stood out, was the whole discussion of a revival of Lindy Hop, and that's a very big topic on its own.
Yep. Yes, cultural translation. That is very interesting. And maybe I'll pass this one on to you because you wanted to talk about also the unwritten rules. Yeah. And the idea before I promise I will stop talking. The idea is that we hear a word, let's say, and we talked a bit about this in class for those who had it today, but let's say we hear a word like flavor. A word like flavor. How you will connect with that word and how you will understand that word is culturally coded. When we say flavor, are you thinking about drinks? Are you thinking about food? Or are you thinking about like someone who's got flavor? Yeah, like how do we understand terms and how we use them? That's culturally coded. So maybe if I'm saying, ooh, that's got flavor, I mean something, but you will understand something else because of your culture. And then you will go to someone else and tell that story, but it might not be what I meant, because then it was culturally translated into something else. So that's this idea of cultural translation for, in a nutshell. It's not the whole thing, but in a nutshell. Do it.
Right. So this is, cultural translation is a topic that's come up quite a few times. And trying to explain sometimes these intangible concepts and what they mean. And it means like you used, what was the one you just said?
Flavor?
Flavor. For me, the one that always comes up is stuff like groove or like bounce. Like because we've heard these words when we were learning, but then their meaning gets changed depending on how we understand it. So I came up, I was trying to find a way to describe how that works. So I came up with a story, just made it up. So obviously it's not based on anything, but I kind of hope that it has enough of those elements to at least paint a picture of what we mean. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you this story. So it's about these two communities that lived together. We had the people of the sky and the people of the sea, right? So the people of the sky lived up above, and they were free to move about, you know, with the wind in any direction, up, down, left, right, you know, carefree was kind of in their nature. So unimpeded movement in any direction, right? They lived right next to the people of the sea. Now, the people of the sea had a similar way of life. They were also free to move in any direction, up, down, left, right. However, their movement was always influenced by the rise and fall of the waves, by the ebb and flow of the tide. So there was always a connection to the rhythm of the sea in their movement, even though they had the same similar level of freedom as the people of the sky. So they lived together in harmony, yada, yada, yada. You know, there was no real issues until it came to trying to teach the people, let's say there was a third community, say the people of the, I'll get to that. People wanted to learn about boats, right? How do boats move? And the people of the sky were like, gosh, I can tell you so much about how boats move. You know, we've seen boats our whole lives. You know, the winds that guide the sails, and in their mind, it was like boats move in any direction across the sea, in straight lines, curved lines. They don't go on the land, but they move about like this. That was their perception, and that was what they had observed about the movement of boats. The people of the sea, however, were like, well, yes, while that is true, but there is so much more to the movement of boats. You know, boats rise and fall in the wind. I'm talking to people with like a lot of water. So
You know about
you
boats.
know about boats, right? Boats rise and fall with the waves. Boats rock to the side. You know, they shift and they roll. There's a lot more that happens in the movement of boats. And the people of the sea were trying to explain this, saying like, no, but boats, you know, they bounce up and down, they roll, they shift.
They rock, they swing.
They rock, they swing, right? But they understood these things because of their knowledge and understanding of the rhythm of the ocean. The boats are actually a part of our community. This is where they live. But it's the people of the sky that we're then going to teach, let's say, the people of the land about how boats move, right? So is what they're saying wrong when they describe how boats move? Not necessarily. What they're saying is completely true. It's just not the whole truth. But it does a disservice to the nature of the culture when all you're getting is, well, boats moving like that. This is how they move. Which isn't untrue, but at the same time, it misses so much about the nature of how they move in the first place. So that is the kind of, I don't know if that helps or not, but that's the kind of way that cultural things can get mistranslated. And it's not an intentional thing most of the time. But if, let's say, if we observe what gets taught and what gets shared, we realize that there's a huge part of it that doesn't really get around. And then the people of the sea are like, hey, listen to us. We actually know about boats, right? Yes, what you're saying is true, but there's so much more to the movement of boats. This is important.
Because when you get on the boat, if you don't know about this and this, you might get sick.
You wouldn't even know you would get sick. Because you only know that boats move in those lines. You wouldn't know about that. So hopefully that helps. As like a story to try and like paint a picture of cultural mistranslation. The other thing that this is what I want to actually ask everyone to try and chime in, and it's a thing that I like to discuss, is that cultures have their own rules, right? They have their own practices, their own the way that they share things, the way that they learn things. Every culture has them, so it's not unique to any specific one. But as there's rules that they will say, there's rules that will be like, no, you have to do this, or you only do this in these circumstances. But there are also what we call unwritten rules. Rules that aren't noted down anywhere. They're not official, but they are shared, they are learnt, being in certain spaces, and they are also perpetuated and passed to new generations that understand. So the question I want to ask is, what do you think are the unwritten rules in the Lindy Hop scene?
The global scene, or
The global scene.
Global scene. unwritten rules.
It's a happy day.
Difficult.
Yeah.
Mike?
It's a happy dance.
It's a happy dance.
Happy dance.
Joy.
Joy.
And that's the only emotion you're allowed to have.
Yes.
That's all it is about. Yeah, of course not.
That's the
But
Yeah,
that's not
but
even
that's-
the
that's-
emphasize. Yeah. What
Anything
else?
else?
They can be anything. They don't have to be what you think conceptually. Can we have you pass that? Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe that's Lindy Hop and community go hand in hand.
Lindy Hop and
And
community
community.
goes hand in hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a Lindy Hopper, you automatically are part of the community. It will just happen magically. Yeah. Yeah, that's another concept that was absolutely tested by the pandemic, right? Because the dance disappeared and the community was gone. Because we were not really a community, or we were a community of practice. That means when the practice was gone, the community was gone. That was the only thing gluing us together. And that was a bit of also the comments. People were like, okay, when we get back, we actually want to do a bit more of the human stuff and the connecting between people and getting to know each other, so that if the dance disappears, the community will not disappear again. Anything else? Can we pass around the microphone?
Yeah, just that.
Yeah, I would rather see it as a wide spectrum of a form of expression that goes more beyond only emotions. And I saw during the COVID period, I saw a lot of communities fall down, especially in the Lindy Hop scene. But I'm also in the breakdancing scene. And in the breakdancing scene, we stick together because of the COVID period, and we find places to practice together because, we are together in this bad period. So why would you fall down or break up this community and just getting together right now when you need each other the most? So that was the period that I more went to the breakdancing to still continue my expression, because I had a lot of urge for expression during a period of bad times and bad feelings.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not only a happy dance.
It's not just a happy dance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Circulate.
One that I don't necessarily agree with, but that I've heard is it should be just fun, dancing.
Yeah.
So you miss out on all the real parts of it and the responsibility we have
Yeah.
as the guests in the culture.
The parts that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just deal with the fun stuff. There was a hand over there also.
One that I think I also had is that it was good times those times. People were dressed better, they were dancing better. I literally attended a 40-minute presentation about ties. Two dudes sat down, opened big folders with the fancy ties, and they were like, those are shit, those are shit, those are authentic, those you should buy. And I thought, oh shit, my tie is shit. I should buy a better tie.
Fashion. It's about fun and fashion. And nothing that is upsetting.
There's also a bit of a weird nostalgia for that time as well, that you just mentioned, where we look at it like, wow, this was a great time.
The good old days.
Some of us are then like, what books are you reading? There was two hands, one here,
an unspoken rule. If you win competitions, you are qualified to teach the dance.
Competition will determine your worth as a human being. Levels will determine your worth as a human beings too. That's it's a hard rule, right, this one, huh? Especially when it doesn't matter so much. Yeah.
To build onto that, before the pandemic, it was all about you have to move exactly in that way. It has to look like that. And then you will win, and then you will be in those high levels. If you were showing something else, it was kind of, not really. Next.
Conformity. Yes. We're doing a dance of freedom and individual expression and improvisation, but you have to conform. Yeah.
Do you notice how all of you know and understand those concepts without us having to explain it to you, right? That's what we mean by unwritten rules. So even though in theory we talk about individuality, freedom of expression, musicality, you all understand that within a competition environment, or to be valued as a dancer, you must express it in a certain way. Right? So there's a conflict there. But no one teaches that. But you all understand. I can see everyone just like, yep, I know it, I've seen it, I've experienced it. And so these are the things that we want people to try to consider, and we're also trying to learn them ourselves about what are those underlying rules that we have that are written, not just in the fabric of the scene, because that's not where these rules come from. These rules come from our society. And we bring them in as part of our spaces. But our theories and our terminology describe something that's quite different. So we're trying to align what is it that we actually value. Do we actually value freedom of expression or individuality? Do we understand what that actually means within that cultural context? Because it means something different within the cultures that we come from. I was going to ask something that's not related yet.
Okay. I'll go to the second topic that you brought up, which was the revival, or how I refer to it, the mythology of the revival. I had a good friend and another dancer from New York, Julia Loving, who's also a community leader. She started an LLC called Swing With Us NYC to get New Yorkers to come and dance uptown, not just downtown. And it's a very inviting title. Swing With Us NYC, we're nice people. So I was like, yeah, you're very nice to people, inviting. And she told me, how can you revive something that never died? Because we have a bit of a mythology in our scene, and some of you have been dancing for a bit longer. You might have heard this myth that Lindy Hop was very popular. It started in the late 1920s, and it was super popular until about the late 1950s, where it disappeared. And then Frankie went to the post office. And that was the end of the dance for everyone. And in the 80s, thanks to the hard work of enthusiasts that watched, now it was before the Gap commercial, so it was probably thanks to old movies, probably the Helter Poppy nowadays, the races, that went and found these retired elders and revived the dance. And that happened in 3 places. In California, Pasadena, in London, UK, and in Stockholm, Sweden. That is our mythology. How many people have heard that story? Yes. So that was basically my fieldwork. My fieldwork was like, I've met people who were dancing in the US in the 70s and 80s. Like, I literally met them. And I met them late. I met Miss Mickey and Mama Amani and Miss Darlene in 2018. I have already been dancing for 12 years by then. And I was like, wait a minute, what, who, when, how, who? Who's Mama Lou? Huh? Who danced with who? I thought the dance died. And I realized that it was not, it was a version, I was given the version of the people of the sky. Because for the people of the sky, the dance died. But for the people of the sea, the dance was still going on in the community. The dance was still being passed on in the community, and the dance is still being passed on in the community. I was talking about Samuel Coleman. Samuel Coleman taught Julia Loving to dance, and Samuel Coleman learned from Clyde Wilder and Miss Mickey Davidson and Laura Jeffers. Laura Jeffers learned from Frankie Manning. Miss Mickey Davidson learned from Norma Miller. Clyde Wilder learned from Mama Lou Parks and Norma Miller. And they are still passing on the dance. So that lineage of dance happening in the community in the US is very much alive and going on. But because we didn't know about it, and it was not affecting the global scene did disappear, but the dance did not disappear in the community. And that's, I think, an important thing to stop spreading this mythology of the revival. Yes, okay, if we want to say there was a revival, but it was for the outsiders, it was not in the community. We cannot say the dance died, it didn't. Chester Whitmore in California learned from Arthur Savage, who is another Lindy Hopper, who danced with Murray Bryant. He learned from Fayard Nicholas. He learned from Leonard Tripp. Like, he learned from all of these elders that were doing the do back in the days. And he's teaching today. He's coaching an organization called the LA Swing Dance Posse. And Rachel Brown and Arthur Wright are now passing the dance that they learned from Chester to the community in Los Angeles. So it didn't die. That is not a true story, and it's important that we are aware of it. But like one of the mechanisms we talked about of ethnocide is just, you don't talk about certain people. If you don't talk about certain people, it's easy to pretend the story didn't happen. Mama Lou Parks is key in the passing on of the dance from the Savoy Ballroom era to today. When the Savoy Ballroom closed, and double check me on this, because I'm not a historian, I'm an anthropologist, so you always have to double check an anthropologist. Don't trust an anthropologist. And she was, from what I know, the goddaughter of Charles Buchanan, who was running the Savoy Ballroom. And when the Savoy Ballroom closed, he asked her to keep it going. And she promised her godfather to keep it going. And she opened the Savoy Manor in the Bronx and kept the Harvest Moon Ball going. And taught youth in the Bronx to dance and perform. Organized social events, multi-generational social events, with dancing of the dances of the days, and also swing, for people to keep on the practice alive. If you remove Mama Lou, you remove a big part of that legacy. How many people have heard about Mama Lou Parks before? Less than half the people here. Because she's not talked about. She's a key person. You raise Mama Lou, you raise a big part of the lineage. Norma Miller was not very popular either, because she would tell you about yourself. And she is the one, she had many she basically never stopped dancing. She did not retire. She did not stop. She was always in entertainment. She put different hats. She was a dancer, and then she became a singer, and then a writer, a comedian. She kept on going, and she always taught people the dance. Another aspect that's important also to know, like in which the dance didn't die, is that Lindy Hop created many other dances. There are many dances that came from the Lindy Hop. And we know a lot of those dances that are popular in the global scene. West Coast swing, East Coast swing. What else? Jive, boogie woogie. We know those dances, and we know that they are connected to the Lindy Hop. Have you heard about DC hand dancing, Chicago stepping, Detroit ballroom, DFW swing out, Zydeco? Oh, well, Philly bop. Philadelphia Bob is one I just heard about, like I was looking at the internet. I was like, oh, this one's cool. There's so many dances that are practiced in the black communities today in the US that comes from the Lindy Hop that we don't know about. Because the dance died, right? People just stopped dancing and we revived it. So yeah, this mythology of the revival is something that we need to get rid of. It's not a true story. It's not the whole story. It's a true story for one point of view, but it's not the whole story. Anybody else wants to share how they came into that conversation and also some of the topics or questions or misconceptions that they have encountered in their exploration? Are we done? We're done. Kind of.
Yeah, there are a lot of people waiting upstairs.
Sorry. Oh my
It's all right,
goodness.
it's all right.
Yeah.
Wonderful listening to you. But
Okay, maybe we have one last.
Just round it up.
A small one, if someone wants to share. Otherwise, we will wrap up. Yeah, do it.
Very quick question. This is just going to be like shout out words, and then we'll try and like tie it up. Okay, we use the word culture quite a lot, right? So what aspects of culture do we actually know? Culture. What comes to mind when you think of culture?
Music.
Tradition, say again?
Music.
Music, something, food, yeah.
Habits.
Language, yeah.
Art.
Art, yeah.
expression.
Expression.
Food.
Ways of interacting
It's a way of expressing.
with each other. What else?
Fashion.
Distance.
Fashion.
Fashion. Yes, nature.
Fashion.
Interestingly enough, no one said dance. This always comes up, but no one says dance. It's really weird.
Yes.
But yeah, okay.
Arts. Yeah.
Arts. Okay, these are all the things. So relating to the culture that we believe that we are sharing within Lindy Hop, what of those things do we know about that culture? So all these things that we've just mentioned are aspects of a culture. Lindy Hop, jazz, all these things come from African American culture. What aspects of what of these things that we've mentioned that are to do with that culture do we know about?
What else do we know about African American culture other than Lindy Hop and jazz? Food, yeah.
Literature. Poetry.
Literature. Fashion as well.
Dance. Hip hop.
Dance, also dances.
Music.
Music.
And more importantly, who has taught us those things? That's something to think about. A lot of those things we don't learn from those communities or those people. So again, when it comes to translation and coming back to that story, we're learning, yes, we're learning some of these things, but there's a huge part that we end up missing, but we also, because we also don't value behind it. Maybe if we leave it there.
That's great.
Yeah. Awesome. Like, thank you.
Thank you.